Vincent, I'm freezing. Can we turn the heat up? It feels like the Ice Age in here. I'm literally wearing 3 pairs of socks.
A little cold never hurt anyone, Jody. In fact, humanity owes its greatest cinematic nightmares to a summer that never arrived. A summer that birthed a monster.
He's alive!
What are you talking about? Summer is strictly for sunburns, overpriced theme parks, and blockbuster movies.
Not in the year 1816. In 1816, the summer died, and in its icy apocalyptic grave, the modern horror genre was violently jolted to life. Welcome back to the study. When you think of the origins of Frankenstein, you likely imagine James Whale's 1931 film, Boris Karloff in heavy makeup, neck bolts, and a mad scientist screaming, "It's alive!" But that true story does not begin in the laboratory. It begins with a real-world global apocalypse. In April of 1815, Mount Tambora erupted in Indonesia. It was the largest volcanic eruption in recorded human history. It ejected billions of tons of ash and sulfur dioxide into the stratosphere, physically blocking out the sun across the globe.
Wait, literally? Like global blackout? I thought that was just a myth.
It was a terrifying reality. The following year, in 1816, became known in the history books as the year without a summer. Isn't that kind of like the year without a Santa Claus, Jody? I'm sure he might have had something to do with it.
I'm too much.
The climate completely collapsed. Crops failed globally, leading to mass starvation. In the United States, there were massive blizzards in June. The skies over Europe were stained a sickly, perpetual yellow. People legitimately believed it was the end of days. And it was against this bleak, apocalyptic backdrop that a group of eccentric, scandalous British tourists found themselves trapped inside a sprawling mansion near Lake Geneva, Switzerland.
Trapped indoors during a global disaster with nothing to do? Sounds like a nightmare. Who was actually in this house?
It was the ultimate 19th century Gothic house party, filled with people who were essentially running from the tabloids. First you had Lord Byron, the most famous, dangerous, and scandalous poet in the world. Essentially the rock star of his era, fleeing England due to crippling debt and rampant rumors about his personal life.
So he was basically canceled in the 1800s? Got it.
Oh, precisely. With him was his personal physician, a brooding young man named Dr. John Polidori. Then you had another brilliant poet named Percy Shelley. Percy had abandoned his pregnant wife in England to run away with his new teenage lover, Mary Goodwin.
Hold up. He left his pregnant wife? These guys sound less like romantic poets and more like a total nightmare. And how old was Mary?
Mary was just 18 years old, and to make matters more chaotic, Mary's stepsister, Claire Claremont, had forced her way on the trip because she was pregnant with Lord Byron's child.
This isn't just a history lesson, Uncle Vincent. This is an episode of Jerry Springer.
It was a powder keg of brilliant, deeply flawed minds. And for days, the torrential rain and freezing temperatures kept them locked inside. To pass the time, they drank heavy amounts of wine, consumed liquid opium, and read a French translation of a German ghost story anthology called Phantasmagoria. But reading wasn't enough. They spent their evenings deep in philosophical debate. Specifically, they were obsessed with a terrifying new scientific concept sweeping Europe, Galvanism.
Galvanism? That's the frog leg thing, right? Where they hit dead frogs with electricity to make them twitch?
It started with frogs, yes, by Luigi Galvani. But by 1816, Galvani's nephew Giovanni Aldini had escalated the experiments. He was traveling across Europe, performing public demonstrations on human corpses. In London, Aldini famously took the body of an executed murderer, hooked him up to a primitive battery, and applied a massive electric current.
You've got to be kidding me. In front of an audience?
Yes, the dead man's jaw began to quiver. His left eye opened. His legs kicked so violently that some people in the audience panicked, genuinely believing the murderer was returning to life. Percy and Byron discussed these experiments by the fire at the Villa Diodati, wondering if the spark of life could truly be engineered by man. 18-year-old Mary sat quietly in the corner, absorbing every horrifying word.
Okay, so you have a gloomy mansion and apocalyptic ash cloud, heavy drugs, and guys talking about electrocuting dead bodies. Oh, that's a recipe for a bad trip.
It was the perfect storm. Eventually they grew bored of simply talking, and that is when Lord Byron issued a fateful challenge. He looked at the brilliant minds assembled in the room and said, "We will each write a ghost story."
Oh, it is on. A heavyweight riders block death match? Let me guess, the famous poets knocked it out of the park.
Actually, no. The heavyweights failed miserably. Percy Shelley couldn't finish a single narrative. Lord Byron wrote a few fragmented pages of a story and simply gave up. But Mary couldn't think of an idea for days. The pressure was mounting until one night she went to bed and experienced a terrifying waking nightmare. She would later write in her diary, "I saw the pale student of unhallowed arts kneeling beside the thing he had put together. I saw the hideous phantasm of a man stretched out, and then, on the working of some powerful engine, shows signs of life. He sleeps, but he is awakened. He opens his eyes. Behold, the horrid thing stands at his bedside, opening his curtains."
Holy, that's incredibly metal. She literally dreamt up the monster right there in her bed.
She awoke in a cold sweat, realizing that what terrified her would surely terrify the others. She began writing her story the next morning. It was published anonymously 2 years later in 1818 under the title Frankenstein, or The Modern Prometheus.
So, an 18-year-old girl trapped in a house by a volcanic winter completely destroys the greatest male writers of her generation at their own game? Oh man, that's iconic.
She didn't just win the game, Jody. She invented an entirely new genre with Frankenstein. Mary Shelley is widely credited with creating the very first work of science fiction. But the story of the Villa Diodati does not have a happy ending.
Why did the book flop?
No, the book was a phenomenon, but a dark curse seemed to follow the people in that house. It was if playing God by the fire demanded a terrible toll. Within a few short years, almost everyone who participated in that ghost story challenge met a tragic end.
Well, what happened to them?
Percy Shelley drowned at sea in a bizarre boating accident. He was only 29. Lord Byron died of a violent fever in Greece at the age of 36. And what of Dr. John Polidori before his own tragic death by suicide a few years later? Dr. Polidori managed to finish his ghost story from that weekend. He took an abandoned, fragmented idea of Lord Byron's and turned it into a short novel called The Vampire. Or Vampire.
Wait, you're telling me?
Yes, Polidori's book was the first time in history a vampire was depicted not as a mindless, bloated corpse from folklore, but as an aristocratic, sophisticated, charming predator. It was the direct inspiration for Bram Stoker's Dracula.
I started upon my story. I've called it The Vampire.
Are you entirely serious right now? You're telling me that this one specific rainy weekend in 1816 accidentally birthed both Frankenstein and Dracula?
The year without a summer, the weekend that forged the two greatest titans of terror, one thunderstorm, one volcanic eruption, two immortal monsters. Mary Shelley outlived them all. carrying the grief of her lost husband and the unimaginable legacy of her creation. She proved that the most terrifying monsters do not come from the grave. They come from the dark, quiet corners of the human mind.
Note to self, if I ever get snowed in with a bunch of eccentric poets, I'm just going to play solitaire.
What is your favorite classic movie monster of all time? Let us know in the comments below.
And if you want to know or see how actual heavy Hollywood monsters were brought to life by stuntmen and monster actors, click the video linked on your screen and step inside the character with our pal Ben.
Until next time, stay out of the rain.